All right, we're rolling live from the wasteland out here in the survival pod. This is Freedom Day. When it comes to choosing property, I gotta be honest about this. There's criteria you look in, and some of it isn't just the price. You can get cheap land, but is that land going to do for you what you want it to do? And my criteria is a bit different than a lot of people. And I understand some of you are homebodies, but you really got to choose it for what it's going to do for you. Yeah. Where am I going with this? Freedomville, like, subscribe. Let's get into it. And always turn up the video speed. And why do I always say that? Because, dude, seriously, if you're watching videos at regular speed, what are you doing? You could be watching 2 times the content. You know, you could train your mind to think and learn faster. I mean, I swear to God, sometimes when I listen to people at regular speed, I'm like, what? Why? So, hey, when I upload this, watch it 1.75. Like, subscribe. Let's get into this. I had this conversation with a relative of mine, and he's like, if you go 100 or so miles over that way, the land's a lot cheaper. I'm like, yeah, but the elevation's too high. And there's not really the TV stations out there, not so much. Maybe so, maybe not. I haven't checked out the TV stations, but the elevation is kind of a thing for me. And also, what resources do I get from a general area? Like, can I easily go to town and get things? That's a thing. When I say get things, am I going to be it's going to be the same situation like, I got to be honest, I'm not going to lie. When I go to the food banks around here, pretty good food banks. If I was going to buy land, I would buy it somewhere down here, and I'd pick up the spot where I picked up all the same TV stations I'm picking up now. And I'm picking up around 69 stations. They're like, well, why does that matter so much? It's entertainment. It's the type of thing you appreciate. Like, imagine there was no internet, no TV, no anything. I know some of you claim you dream of that shit, but I'm going to tell you a little story about my life. For 4 years, I lived in the woods in my early 20s. And when I first, ended up, living in vehicles, from the Blazer to the party van, or it's actually the proto van, and eventually the battle van. Now I got this one. There's a lot of years there where I just didn't have TV. I didn't have anything. So there's a lot of content I can catch up on. I've been there, done that. I've lived your Walden Pond dream. I wasn't even trying to be Walden, by the way. I've been there, done that. And I can tell you, I actually like TV. I like video games. The fact that video games went from being something that had to be a console and lots of energy, TVs took up a lot of energy. And back in the day, solar wasn't shit. Now solar can produce all the energy I need for refrigeration, TV, video games, and everything. So basically, the only thing that I don't have out here, and I could construct it if I wanted to, is an oven big enough to do a Papa Murphy's pizza. And by the way, I'm kind of on the fence with Papa Murphy's because I've had cases where people literally make the large when I ordered the family size. And, it's part of the reason I can't. Like, I'd rather go to Costco and get a pizza, a basic $10 pizza. I can get 2 of those for the price of that family pizza. And that's part of the reason I'm like, fuck Papa Murphy's. But that's the only thing I can't do, and I can just get a pizza at fucking Costco if I really give a shit. So the point of it is that when I'm down here, there's benefits I have to being where I'm at. For instance, up north, I'd be spending to have the house at a normal temperature about $200 a month. I kept it down or anywhere from 70 to 90 when I lived there, but I was living basically in a refrigerator. And I'm okay with that to a certain degree, but that doesn't mean it's like super comfortable. You get used to refrigerator mode. In fact, you want to feel warm in a cold ass refrigerator style house. You want to know how to feel warm in that? You go outside, take your dog for a walk when it's like, in the teens or the single digits. You're all layered up. And the dog's all taking his ever-loving sweet time, taking his dump over there across the street. By the way, funny thing that happens when the thaw happens, and in the spring after the thaw happens, there's the insane amount of turds. And what you do is before any plants grow, you go out there with the rake and you just rake it up into a fine, like, kind of dog poo thing where it's not really, it just disintegrates into the ground. And 6 months of dog crap it was frozen in the snow. You get that place out there where you forget that there were ever leaves on the trees. And then you see a picture from like X amount of months ago. And this is last winter. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. This place, that was a golden color. The whole tree was covered in golden leaves. And the lawn was kind of brownish green because it was late summer, early fall. They don't have, by the way, the Northern Command up there does not have a nice, beautiful Indian summer. It has way too hot, and then for about a month in between weather, maybe good, maybe bad, maybe like this. Like, it'll be 70 degrees, and then the next week it'll be down in the fucking freezings. It'll be snowing. I say screw that. And so when I was talking to my relative about this, and he was like, well, you go 100 so miles over this way, you can get that property for like $10,000 or $20,000 less. I'm like, I'd rather pay $10,000 or $20,000 more to have this elevation, to have this heat, to have this free heat. Because the money I save on heat, and by the way, if I have a cheap piece of land in the wasteland, let's say I pay 20, 30, 40, 50, let's say 50,000. I think I found a couple acres. I think it was like, I don't know, it was 30 or 40,000 in a few, like 20, 30 miles south of here. Now the question would be on that property, am I going to pick up the TV stations I'm picking up here? What type of internet am I going to have there? Am I going to have the same amenities I'm going to have here? So I'm very selective about that. That's one of the things. The money that I save by basically being strategic. They'd be like, do you really got to have the TV stations? Why don't you just, get the internet and watch things streaming? I could, but how much am I going to pay per month for that expanded internet? Like let's just say I had a business and I had the internet as well. Okay, I could see that. Okay. But right now, for $30 a month, I've got unlimited data out here in the middle of nowhere, and I've got 5G. Like real legitimate 5G in the middle of friggin' nowhere. This is great. And so between not having to pay a heating bill, not having to pay, let's say no heating bill, no insurance bill, no water bill, what is this land here going to do for me? A lot. Honestly, at some point you will realize when you pay off a house, you're actually probably spending more on the basic, upkeep cost for your property than you actually would be paying just to live. And so then they say, well, what about the summer when it gets way too hot down here? If I go 130 miles north of here, I'll go from about, say, 1,500 in elevation out in the wasteland, cactus land, to basically, you go up there and it's pine trees. It's pine trees and, Stellar jays, that little blue jay with the mohawk. Look it up. If you've never seen a Stellar jay, it literally looks like a mohawk. A few antelope running around, some deer, some elk, cows up in the highlands, and not as many TV stations, but enough. You got the basics, got the grit, got the little bit of news channel. Obviously, you got the country channel. But up there, it's summer, and it's a beautiful summer. And you get that kind of change, like the Northwest. And by the way, from here to the Northwest is another example. I got my Western holdings over there in Western Washington on the North Olympic Peninsula. And guess what? Up there, you get up there. So let's say, okay, May and June can be dicey. May and June are dicey. And really, if you want to deal with the state and you're not running your taxes out of it, Oregon's a beautiful state. The Willamette Valley turns into a beautiful place about a month earlier than Washington does. Washington is just a cold, wet place. The North Olympic Peninsula is cold and wet, and there's food everywhere. But you get out there into some places in the Cascades, and once the melt happens, once the thaw happens, and it stops being mud season, that's why I say, for instance, in the Bend area, the Cascade Bend area of Oregon, you might want to do that on the way down south. So you kind of drive by and visit that. But if you add up how much you're spending or how much you're saving in utility bills, heating, water, insurance, a cheap piece of land down here and a cheap piece of land up north. And the same thing, like a guy was saying earlier, he's building his own situation in the Carolinas. And he's found what works for him. And if you find a place, like you can build a tiny home, or you get say you buy someone's old house. And let's say you are a homebody. You got your little place. You got your own little universe in your own little place. You got your garden. You got whatever you're doing. Cool. But make sure the amenities of where you're at work for you. Like some people, they TV be damned, they wouldn't care. And that opens up a lot of options. There's tons of America where you'll be out in the boonstickies and there isn't any real airwave TV there, maybe nothing at all. Maybe you watch everything online. And, you can get a house anywhere from, 30 grand. I've seen gutted out houses that were 3 bedrooms ready to be rebuilt on the inside for 20 grand. 20 grand. You could literally bum that much change. It wouldn't take that long. That you'd probably in like however many months you could have that. So, I mean, if you could bum that much change, you could just actually work a fucking job and live in a van, like a minivan or whatever you got to do. I've seen people living in cars doing that. You know, like I've seen people that have the gym membership, or they work at some sort of hospitality thing, like, and they're cleaning, hotels and stuff, and they're just like, they just take a shower when they're on their break. And it's like, what I'm getting at with this is that you could save the money relatively easy and get a piece of paradise. And let's say that place in the Midwest, for instance, there's good fishing. You like bass fishing, and there's a decent bass fishing lake not too far from there, and the housing's cheap and affordable. Maybe you like turkey hunting. Maybe you could be anywhere in the goddamn country, living in any situation, because you're a gamer and you got a Starlink and you run maybe you run a business online. Maybe, hey, I've heard of people doing stock trading. Some of these young bloods out there, they're getting good with the stock trading. They're good at investing. They're good long-term investors. They could literally live practically anywhere they want. They're not tied down to anything. And so for me, it really comes down to, when I'm looking at a piece of land, I'm looking at the elevation, because 6 months of the year I'd like to be down here. And the other 6 months of the year, I want to be in some northern climate when, like if I wanted to go hiking, I'll be honest, there's parts of Idaho that are absolutely wonderful to hike. There's parts of eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, depending on the time of year. Once it gets to high summer, you don't want to be in eastern Washington, eastern Oregon. Fuck that. But in the spring, sure, it might be cold at night. But once the sun comes up in eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, oh, it's fucking gorgeous out there. Cool in the mornings, kind of a little warm in the afternoons, kind of hot at some points. And so, like, you might visit parts of it. But, like, coming back down south, kind of like the Indian summer, you might want to hit up the Washington, Oregon coast. And then make your way back down south. Maybe even hit into the inlands, like I said before, Bend, Oregon, out there, Wickiup Reservoir, the Sisters area. Out there's a place called Davis Lake. There's just so many. I drove truck all over the place. I've seen these, and you can see this in like Georgia. You could see it down in Texas. You just gotta find and pick a place, and then look at what that land does for you. If that land allows you to, say, put a camper or an RV on, well, buddy, you've won. Like my Western Washington property, I just paid the taxes for that. I paid out for those 2 lots, and I've thought about if I got a better deal on another lot in there, where I'd have one lot that does the same thing and has the same TV channels and better sun, I might actually move to that lot and sell those 2 lots just to get better sun. Because the thing I get the advantage on that place up there is we have our own well system in that little community. Yes, I have an HOA, but we also have a private beach/mud flat, where we have our own boat launch and we plant our own clams. So what I'm paying like $220 a year in HOA, I am giving my dividends back in it. I pay up north for my fucking godforsaken house, which really nice house, good remodel we did on it. I'm paying $130 a month for water I never drink. I have to pay for insurance just in case the neighbors fuck it up. So from my perspective, my house up north, honestly, I'll be real about it. It was a mistake that I bought years ago and kept it around as a storage unit because I was too busy working and driving. But if I could go back in time, if I added up how much money I've lost in utilities and the basics, I'd be living at less than $5,000 a year. As is the way that I am now. I'm happy the way that I am now. And so you think about that. If you find a place like, for instance, let's say up there, 130 miles from here. 130 miles from here is 8,500 feet. How much gas would it cost you to go that far and that far back with an RV? Towing, like, say, a little Ford Maverick or something? Have a little Livingston boat on top of, like a little aluminum or Livingston on top of the Maverick. Have a little lumber rack. Maybe set up a couple 10 by 30s on each side of your RV, so you've got, like, basically enough square footage like a house. People come to visit. Oh, yeah, just stay in that over there. Stay in that canopy over there. And the other canopy over there is kind of like a bathroom / kitchen / whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, life can be incredibly cheap and incredibly easy. But if I'm going to pick a piece of property, it's going to be what it does for me. What are the amenities? What is it going to cost me in basics? do I get more from the property than I spend? And the Washington property, for instance, between the taxes and the HOA, I'm only spending $60 per month for that. Can you show me rent for $60 a month anywhere in Washington State? Well, I achieved it. And I want to achieve the same thing down here. And so let's just say I don't want to go to Washington. I just go up into the hills up in the state next to me. You know, I could just do that. Let's just say I want to go over to California and check out the redwoods. I could do that. But when I pick a piece of land down here, it's going to be in this low elevation. It's going to be a little cold at night, perfectly good for bags. Sometimes it gets down to the 20s here, but pretty rarely. It's got down to the teens. I've been here when it was the teens, but pretty rarely. And I'm going to have my 69 airwave TV stations. Used to be 75 plus, and 10 of them disappeared, and that sucked. But yeah, no. You got to look at what the land's going to do for you and what it's going to cost you. And a lot of that comes down to elevation, general cost of taxes, resources, and all that shit. And if you can avoid all that crap, you're better off. And look, what I'm doing is not for everybody. I'm the first to acknowledge that. But I don't value living in a house. I don't. I own one, and I care enough about it to take care of it as a resource, as a potential asset. If I could rent it out, if I had property managers that didn't seem like they were butt-fucking cousin fuckers, like shiesty cousin fuckers, because that's all I was running into up north, then I would rent it out. But no, given the choice, if I got the right price, I'd sell that house tomorrow and move on with my life. I'd have a piece of land in the south down here, and I'd have my northern command up in western Washington, and maybe a place 130 miles from here up in the hills. Anyhow, this is Freedom Film. And just as a closing thought, even when I'm up in western Washington, I don't always stay on my property. There's a lot of places and clear cuts and places I know of that I'd rather be out in the wilds, just like I am right now. So, hey, y'all take it easy. Just some thoughts. Yeah, he does move occasionally. Peace.